From gardening to animals to extreme renovations, welcome to Homesteading at College Hill Farm. Welcome back to College Hill Farm. Today we're putting on fertilizer. Well, today we're going to apply our fertilizer. Our plants have been in the ground for about 3 weeks, and then I'm going to show you some plants that were just planted. But we're going to apply fertilizer. I always like to apply fertilizer after I hoe. And I like to let my plants be established for 2 or 3 weeks before I put fertilizer to them. So that way I'm not fertilizing plants that are not going to make it and wasting fertilizer. Remember, every ounce of fertilizer that you put in your field that's not used by your plants or the weeds runs off into the river. Now, I realize that the small farmer like us, the hobby farmer, the homesteader who's raising their own food, is probably not contributing to the runoff in the creeks and streams. But it's like the old woman peeing in the ocean, every little bit helps. So, I'm going to go ahead and apply my fertilizer today. Now, I'm going to start off by fertilizing my tomatoes. So, let's talk about that. On our website, and what you can do over here on the right hand side of your screen, there's a little subscribe button, a little red subscribe button down here. What you're going to do, or it's right there. What you can do is you can click on that, and that'll take you to our home page, and you can click on our Facebook link, and you can look up at our photos, and on the photos there is a 2 pages that I've created that show you how much fertilizer we're going to apply based on the fertilizer we have. And I show you how to apply fertilizer. I talk about it, how to do the math in a video. You can go see that video as well. But I'm going to go to our web page, our Facebook page, and I'm going to pull up the fertilizer thing about tomatoes. And it says, tomatoes, work 1.6 ounces of nitrogen per 100-foot row. At planting, well, when they're a third grown, I do it again, and then when they start setting fruit, I do it again. But I'm going to go ahead and get that nitrogen on. But 1.6 ounces is not a lot. So how much of the granulated fertilizer do I use? Well, I've got 12, 12, 12. If you can have 10, 10, 10, 36, 0, 0, there's a whole bunch of them, whatever your bag says. Now, my soil was okay on nitrogen and phosphorus, phosphorus and potassium, K and P. It was fine, but I'm going to use a fertilizer so it doesn't get depleted because it was like it was supposed to be. Nitrogen, my soil was depleted, so I need to add the nitrogen that my plants need. So what you have to do, if it's 12, 12, 12, the first number is always nitrogen. So you take 0.12 because it's 12 times 16, and for every pound of this fertilizer there's 1.92 ounces of nitrogen. Well, I just need 1.6. So, and I'm just going to estimate here, but in a bag of fertilizer, this pelletized fertilizer that you can buy, the nitrogen or the weight of it is about a pound per cup, or half a pound per cup, excuse me, about a half a pound per cup. So for every pound of fertilizer, there is, I'll get it out, for every pound of fertilizer there's 1.92 ounces. I need 1.6, so I need less than a pound. So I only need 2 cups of fertilizer, 16 ounces. Well, what I've got, you might recognize that cup. I use these all the time in the garden. So here's my fertilizer. That's enough to do 2 rows. That's 32 ounces of fertilizer. That's enough to do 2 rows. So I'll go down and then come back up doing the other row. So I've got 2 100-foot rows of tomatoes here to do, and I'm going to go ahead and apply that, and I'm going to show you how. Here's our 2 tomato plants. Now, if you think about it, 32 ounces is 2 tablespoons per ounce. That's 64 tablespoons. Well, I've got 48 and 48, so I've got 90-some plants. So I need to use less than a tablespoon. Well, there's 3 teaspoons, so 32 ounces, there's 6 teaspoons per ounce. So each one of these plants should get about 2 teaspoons, somewhere in that neighborhood. So all you want to do is apply it like this. Here's my 2 teaspoons. Okay? And right at the base of the plant. Each plant, sorry, that was 1 teaspoon, excuse me. Each plant gets 2 teaspoons. Try and keep it off the leaves. If you get it on the leaves, dust it off. And then I'm going to go down through here and apply it to all of them. When you go to peppers, you can see the same thing, and peppers are 1.6 ounces per 100-foot row. Again, there's 48 peppers down through here, so each one's going to get about 2 teaspoons. Time to take a little break. My back's hurting. But the next thing that we're going to fertilize is the onions. Now, onions are heavy feeders. But the onions that I plant, I plant from the round sets that you buy. Those onions are not planted from seed. You have to plant onions from seed, generally the year before, to get great big onions. But I don't never go for that. I've never had a lot of luck growing them. When I get my greenhouse, hopefully, I can start them in my greenhouse the winter before, and then transplant them into the garden and have better luck growing big onions. The mosquitoes are tough this morning. But anyway, onions are heavy feeders. Now, I get my information that I adapted for the thing on our Facebook page about the amount of nitrogen necessary. I adapted that from, I don't remember, maybe it was Auburn, or maybe the University of Kentucky, or some other major land-grant universities. They were put there so that each state would have an agricultural college. The land-grant universities are very important, and scientifically they know what's going to go in the field and what's not. So be sure to pay attention to them. But on the page, again, on our Facebook page, you can go to that, and I've accumulated everything together so that it shows how much nitrogen for each plant for a 100-foot row. Because if you ever notice, everything on my property is either 100 or 50-foot rows. And I did it that way on purpose. That way you can judge from year to year how your yields have gone. But now, onions are super heavy feeders. If we look at onions on that page, it says, turn it sideways so I can see, onions. Apply 8 ounces of nitrogen per 100-foot row 3 weeks after planting. Well, You saw us plant our onions with a PVC pipe planter. You can go back and see that video. Repeat every 2 or 3 weeks until the necks start to soften. Wow! So in other words, for a 100-foot row of onions, in order to get big onions, which is probably where I've failed over the years, in order to get big onions, you need 8 ounces of nitrogen per 100-foot row. Well, how many pounds is that? Well, if I go back and sorry, there's math involved. There's 1.92 ounces of nitrogen in every pound of this fertilizer. So if I do that, it's 8 ounces divided by 1.92 equals, I need to put 4 pounds of fertilizer on that 100-foot row of onions. Wow! 2 cups, or 2 of those 32-ounce cups of fertilizer on 1 row of onions. That just seems crazy to me, but they know what they're talking about. But I'm not going to do that because these onions are for green onions. So I'm going to put 2 pounds or 4 ounces of nitrogen on that 100-foot row. So go ahead and get at that. Now, just so you know, I double-checked my math for that before I ever put it on that piece of paper. I used 3 or 4 different agricultural colleges calculations on nitrogen required for onions. So that was all pretty much in agreement. But all I'm going to do is put this 32-ounce cup of fertilizer on these and call it enough. We're going to fertilize our squash. Now you can go and look up. If I look it up, it says that squash, that's squash and pumpkins and all that. When the plants begin to vine at mid-season, apply a side dressing of 1 ounce of nitrogen fertilizer per 100-foot row. So what I'm going to do, 1 ounce would mean basically a pound of fertilizer per 100-foot row. So, but they haven't come up yet. This is a slow release fertilizer. So I'm going to go ahead and apply some now. That'll give them a little kickstart, but I'm not going to apply nearly as much as I'm supposed to apply. I'm just going to apply some. So again, that kind of breaks the rule, but this is what I've done my whole life, and it ought to help you. All right, let's do it. Okay, I'm just going to get some fertilizer in my cup. Just 32-ounce cup. And then I come over here, and I notice in this first hill that one of the summer squash is coming up. So that's it. That's all I'm going to put down. Now I'll do it on this one. Nothing cupping up there, nothing there. Up, this one's coming up too. It ain't even rained, and they're already poking their little heads up. You never know. All right, now that's got all of my hills squash, and it actually does something else too. Part of those granules are really, really, really white, so it makes them stand out as to where the hills are. So when you're coming through with your tractor, you don't do stupid stuff. Okay, on to the cucumbers. Okay, now let's do the cucumbers. Here is one of my little cucumber plants. That plant is 5 weeks old. Came out of the basement. Remember, it was root bound. Some do better than others. I'm just going to apply a little fertilizer. Then a little fertilizer at this one. A little at this pair. Here are the cucumbers that I planted a week ago, 5 days ago. It's already up. Give this hill a little Look at this hill. A little here. That hill will have to be thinned. We haven't had a rain, and these little cucumbers are coming right up. Look at that. I think every one of those must have germinated. The fertilizing for May is done. I need to hill my potatoes. I need to hoe them out, cut the weeds down in them, then hill them. Hilling will cover a lot of the weeds and kill them, but not all of them. So you still got to take a hoe to it. Your garden's not going to fare well unless you're willing to get out and take a hoe to it. It's going to be 90 degrees by 9 o'clock, and I think, or not 90, but 80 degrees by 9 o'clock, and it's 8:30. I can feel the heat already coming on. If you like this sort of homesteading, self-sustainability, you know I used pelletized fertilizer today. I don't see that as a problem. Preppers and homesteaders avail themselves of what's available. Okay, it's one thing if I was trying to live off the grid and be 100% self-sustainable. I would be using manure and all that stuff, but the truth is I'm not. So I'm being as sustainable as I can. Crystal and I, we grow about 90% of our vegetables that we eat. I haven't had luck at growing great big onions, and I haven't had luck at growing Brussels sprouts. Going to try again this fall, but I haven't had luck at growing Brussels sprouts. So I've grown pretty much everything else that we eat out of the garden, that we eat as vegetables. I grow it right here in our garden. So if you like this sort of stuff, be sure to come on out to the channel. On the right hand side of your screen is a little subscribe button. If you click that, it'll take you to our page where you can subscribe. We upload videos every Sunday, sometimes 1, sometimes 5. It just depends on what's going on that day. So now it's time for me to get on to the next thing.